Good afternoon, fight fans. Jay's Fight Talk here with Sunday Straight Talk. I have my Straight Talk, no punches pulled host Liam Tully from LT's Sweet Boxing Science. My good friend Statman Liam, how are we this Sunday afternoon?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. Look, we had a great night across both of the fight disciplines that we follow last night, and it's long overdue. It's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a while since we've had a weekend this good, and obviously we've got a big week coming up as well.
Crazy. I mean, to say I was not holding out much hope for this past weekend's fights. I mean, you know, there was no massive sort of main event, so to speak. There was none of the glitz and glamour. It was a lot of trade fights and a lot of sort of comeback fights and, you know, like the likes of Sandy Ryan finding their way back in. So they were in sort of winnable fights, not gimme fights, but winnable fights. And then if we fly across to Paris, to the UFC, that's probably one of the best fight night cards. It's probably one of the best UFC cards I've seen this year, if I'm honest, in terms of even fights, stoppages, drama. Last night, in terms of both shows, three shows really, because we had the boxing in the early hours for UK fans that saw Sugar Nunes get a win and retain. We've had some classics, man. We've had a couple of potential fight of the years. It's I'm still up here. I've rewatched both events twice, and they were just as good the second and third time round.
Yeah, look, mate, and I know from obviously you know Troy quite well. I know you were a bundle of nerves yesterday. I know from the interactions we had during the day and during the fight.
You were pants
on the edge of your seat, and look, we'll kind of come into that in a minute, but it was good that, okay, there wasn't any of the marquee names, like we got two marquee names in Canelo and Crawford next Saturday that, of course, in their own right carry themselves. Even, you know, the fight could not deliver, but we've got the two big names there, so that's going to draw rivals all week. This was billed as a next-gen card from Matchroom last night. Yes, Pat McCormack's 31 before anyone says it, but it's a next-gen type of card, and it delivered in more ways than one. Look, there were some good prospects on there. Cameron Vong picks up another good win. Leo Artang, look, it's only 2-0. He's 19, isn't he? There is a lot of potential and talent there. If he's nurtured the same way we see Moses, brought up with the right fights at the right time, that's very exciting for the next 4 or 5 years. And then Troy done what we both hoped he would do, maybe didn't think he'd be able to. We can say that. That's not saying anything. And then Pat McCormack impressed me last night. It wasn't, look, would I have liked to see him get the stoppage off his own steam instead of it having to be done by the corner? Of course. But we're seeing progressions now. What we said about Pat, we want to see him move through the gears and start showing different levels. I think we started to see that last night against a durable opponent.
If I'm honest, Pat McCormack, I think he's ready. I think he's ready now. Because of the amateur background that he had and the pedigree that he had. And it was a good example of the GB boxing setup last night, because you saw both ends of the spectrum in terms of Troy Williamson, who was part of Team GB and ABA champion and came through the international sort of schedule, coming towards the sort of twilight of his career. I hate to say that, but we know we're realistic in where Troy is at his career. Only 3 years older than McCormack, who's also come through the GB setup, but went to the Olympics. Unfortunately for Troy Williamson, he was sort of second to Anthony Fowler. Anthony Fowler was sort of El Capitan and got the Olympics and all the international tournaments, and Troy was sort of in his shadow, a bit similar to AJ and Joe Joyce and Fraser Clark, you know, but Troy bided his time. But we saw how having a fantastic amateur pedigree means that you can go through the levels domestically, and Pat McCormack's got not a handful of fights, but he's not got as many fights as he should have for a guy of his age, but he did turn over fairly late. But I think because of his amateur pedigree, I think he's ready. I think last night we saw somebody that's fought for a world title, somebody that's been at that, I wouldn't say elite level, but certainly world-class level. Unless we put Pat McCormack in a British title, European I don't want to see that for him. Yes, there's the glory of winning a Lonsdale, and you know it's one of the most prestigious, but I think he's past that, and I think if we see him in British level fights, it's sort of stifling his growth. As you said, he's 31. He hasn't got time to piss around, so we need to see him now in a final eliminator, I believe, or give Rowley the money, man, and get him over here. I think he beats Rowley. I think he beats Barrios.
Look, I'll be really honest. Him fighting Conor Walker is a mismatch. And look, we love Conor Walker because we know Conor Walker can be 11-0 down and pull it out the fire. And we know that's what they'll sell a fight off between McCormack and Conor.
I don't want to see it.
But we don't need to see it. You just mentioned Rowley and Barrios. Look, that wasn't a final eliminator, but it was an eliminator for the WBA belt last night.
Yeah.
I don't see why. Look, it's going to take a lot of money to get Rowley out of America, probably more money than it's worth, if that makes sense. But why not make that fight? And Barrios, I mean,
Ryan.
Everyone should be queuing up around the block to face Mario Barrios. He's had 2 draws in his first 2 world title defences. One thing I will say, what have we got on Saturday night? We've got the IBF belt between 2 UK and Ireland-based fighters in Donovan and Crocker.
That'll be a massive fight.
That'll be a massive fight, but both matchroom fighters as well, like Pat. A voluntary defence is normally what you get after you win a world title belt. You normally get a voluntary. Look, Pat McCormack would be a risky voluntary for Paddy Donovan or Lewis Crocker. Don't get me wrong, but I could see that being made. Matchroom in-house. There's options there, but yes, we love a fighter that goes down the British, Commonwealth, European route. But when you look at Pat McCormack's age and what we saw last night, I'd accept European level. But I think on the domestic scene, I want to see him bypass that. And that's not something I often say. But I think when you look at his age and what we've seen from him, getting into a fight with someone like Conor Walker, which he'll win, doesn't really do anything for him, just stunts his growth. 147 is a hot division at the top end at the moment because Boots, etc. have moved on. So now's the time for Pat McCormack to capitalise on that.
It's perfect timing for him. We could see him in 18 months' time be a unified champion if they get the right fights. Eddie Hearn's got the connections. He's got some of the fighters within his stable. If they're not in his stable, they are certainly linked to his stable, and those fights are easy to navigate and easy to put together. I don't want to see Pat McCormack in any kind of domestic fights. I just think that it's a banana skin for him. And I think, right, because I've been underwhelmed by Pat previously, him and his brother, because I think that they obviously know how good they are. And I don't mean this as though they're up their own arse and they believe in their own hype, but I think they need that uncertainty in the opposite corner to get the best out of them. Do you know what I mean? That cliche that when you're up against the best, it brings out the best in you. I believe that is the kind of fights that we need to see Pat in. We need to see him in a fight that we don't know whether he's going to win. And he's not 100%. Obviously, he's going to believe in himself. But what I'm saying is he needs to be up against it to perform. I think if he drops to domestic level, we'll see what we've seen before. Takes his eye off the ball, takes too many shots because he knows he can turn up the gears and maybe get the person out there. I don't want to see him in any other fights than either final eliminators or world title fights or interim world title fights. I think he deserves that now. His amateur pedigree, I know I'm bleating on about it, what he's done, and how easy he made it look last night against somebody that would be very tricky for any of the world champions, I believe. And I believe that if you would have put him in there with Rolly Romero last night, Pat would have stopped him. I hand on heart, believe that. I've got no allegiance to Pat McCormack. I've met him a couple of times. I don't know him. I know people that know him. I don't know him. So I've got no dog in that fight. But I believe that he systematically beats and breaks down Rolly Romero. Barrios, I think he could stop him in under 6 rounds. And people will think I'm being flippant. I've watched boxing for 40 years. I get it wrong a lot of the times. But I know what I'm seeing from this kid, and I believe that the levels are still there for him to go up even more so. I believe we've got a world-class talent in Pat McCormack.
Yeah. Look, I just want to echo what you said at the start of that. I've been massively frustrated with both the McCormacks on their journey. Yes, they've had contractual issues. Yes, they've had injuries. But look, Pat started to move. I've seen Luke fight live, and as impressive as I was by him that night at York Hall, he was fighting a journeyman. So you have to, caveat it with that. That was a certain caliber. That was, Pat McCormack this year has dealt with Robbie Davis Jr. and now Para. Yes, we're not talking about world champions, but we are talking about people that have mixed
Good level.
Good world level fighters over the last 4 or 5 years. Look, before that, it was Andreas Herrera, wasn't it? The first sort of true test we saw for him.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him drop down now, like you say. You've got a handmade Matchroom IBF world title fight, regardless of who wins in Belfast on Saturday night. That was a WBA eliminator. So you either get him the final eliminator to force Rowley's hands, or you try and force it now, or you look at Barrios, who, yeah, look, we don't need to say any more about Barrios. We've both watched his 2 defenses so far, and we've both been underwhelmed with both. So we know that WBC belt is...
I think Dalton Smith missed a trick. I think Dalton Smith should have been sat ringside, and Dalton Smith should have been stepping in there to fight Barrios. I think Dalton Smith beats him, Adam Azim beats him, but, for whatever reason, that fight hasn't been made.
You just mentioned Dalton Smith. Eddie Hearn obviously said the other day that Matchroom have lost the purse bids for the Puello fight, so Dalton Smith is going to have to go and do it away from home. Look, Matchroom have a track record of going away from home and winning world titles. Kell Brook comes to mind. Darren Barker.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
They've got a track record of doing it, so I don't think that's too much of a big deal, but 147 could come very nicely towards Matchroom in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Boots could decide at any point he wants to move back down if the money fights at 154 don't materialise. We know he could make 147 still fairly comfortably. It's an interesting time, but I was hoping we weren't going to get just 10 rounds of Pat McCormack boxing last night. And
safe.
We didn't get it. Yeah, he didn't box safe. He took chances. He put on a performance. And look, that fight could have been stopped from the 5th round onwards, if we're being really honest.
Yep.
My only critique is I wish he moved through the gears and forced the stoppage himself.
I think that's, again, going back to what I said, I think if you've got somebody a little bit more dangerous in there, you'll see Pat go through the levels, and that's when we'll see the best of him. And I think, the best is yet to come, as corny as that may sound. Right, let's move on. I will say that it's an absolute pleasure to see Sandy Ryan's ass in some boxing shorts rather than on OnlyFans or doing half-naked push-ups. Fantastic to see her back in there. She seemed a little bit... I don't know. I mean, Sandy's never been the best on the mic, but she seemed a little bit flat after. She was undecided of whether she was going to drop to 140, continue at 147. She reckons she can make 154. Don't want to see her there. They asked her about the Lauren Price fight. It's a tough fight. Very, very, very tough fight for her. But she didn't seem too eager. And I don't mean this like she's scared. It just seemed really flat from her last night. I don't know whether she was disappointed in her performance, which I thought was of a decent level. It was an expected win. I know they sold this girl as unbeaten and a challenge, but she was never going to challenge. She'd had less than 10 fights, I believe. And it was nice to see Sandy back, I would like to see Sandy in a decent fight, as I've just said with McCormack. But what do you think, firstly, of her performance last night, and what would you like to see next from Ms. Ryan?
I was about to say, I'm only going to comment on her performance, mate. I'm going to leave the other side of things alone. You want me to be really honest? I think in the performance and in how she was on the mic afterwards, we're seeing the hangover from the 2 Michaela Mayer fights still. Sandy won't admit it because her persona is built on how confident and brash and cocky she is. That has been taken away from her, both inside and outside the ring with Michaela Mayer. We don't need to go over the pain incident.
Like a humbling, you mean?
Yeah, you know what I mean. She obviously took a beating in the ring and she took a lot of psychological effects, I think it's fair to say, with everything else that happened before the first fight. So she went in there, she put on a performance. Look, the scorecards were 99, 91, 98, 92, and then Terry O'Connor filled his in all 10 rounds beforehand. I am joking. That was dominant from Sandy Ryan, but how often do we get a scorecard like that from Terry? I just think she doesn't know where she's at. She probably believes that 147, we know Mayer and Lauren Price are going to fight. The closer we now get to October, the more I think we're not going to see that until next year, which is a shame. So Sandy's probably sitting there going, especially at the point she's at in her career, she again is 31 years old. Yeah. And there's not that depth there in the female fight division. So she's probably thinking, right, I can't do 140. There's no way I can go down to them girls. She's probably thinking she has to go back up to 154 if she wants to get decent opportunities, because Sandy Ryan strikes me as someone that if she has another fight against the caliber of opposition she was in with last night, she could get bored. And that's when we've seen her get stopped before when she shouldn't have done,
Yeah.
Well, she didn't get stopped, sorry. She drops to the
Got
early in
beat.
her career. I don't want to see that happen with her again.
No, and I'm the same. And it's a difficult one because, she's used to fighting at a certain level. That was a tune-up fight. But for me, she sort of went through the gears. I thought there were opportunities for her to get that girl out of there last night. And I'm not patronising her or her opponent. And then the interview afterwards, she was just, they were like she didn't want to be there. She was just really flat and sort of didn't really say much about. I thought she was going to go, right, bitches, I'm back. And, I'll fight her, I'll fight her, I'll fight her. But it was like, they were suggesting fights and suggesting Lauren. And she said how good she thought Lauren was. And they'd come through together. And it was like,
very unlike Sandy.
I don't like to see that from a fighter because it points to her being sort of half out the door, looking. I know she's just had a good performance and won every single round, but I was sort of underwhelmed, not by her performance, but by her interview. She just didn't seem really up for a big fight, and it was a really big opportunity for her then to make a statement and then come out all guns blazing like she used to be, brash and obnoxious and, and just say, right, I want it. Lauren, we know each other, we're friends, we'll put all that to one side and let's have an all-British showdown for all the belts that were mine, that I should have won.
That's what it should have been.
That's what she should have done,
yeah.
But she didn't. So I'd like to see the Lauren Price fight. I'm not sure she wins it, but Lauren hasn't got much momentum. She's sort of stumbled through the last couple of years. I know she's got the belts and I know she's the world champion, but she don't fight enough for me. And obviously there's I wouldn't say contractual disputes, but we don't know what's going on. Are we going to see them on BBC? Are we going to see them on, the iPlayer? Are we going to? It's all up in the air, and we'll touch on that when we talk about Troy Williamson shortly. But yeah, I'm not sure what's next for Sandy Ryan. I'd like to see her fight Lauren Price next, or I would actually like to see her drop down and maybe fight Terry Harper, but I just don't think she can get that.
I don't think she can get to 140. I'm looking.
She said she can. She said it confidently last night. That's a better fight for her.
I think that was probably the only thing.
Sorry to cut you. When I say a more winnable fight, I don't mean that dismissing Terry Harper because I rate Terry. I just think that she don't hit as hard as what Lauren Price does, and that's what worries me in the Sandy. I'm not saying Sandy's chinny, but Lauren hits pretty hard, man, at the weight. And I just think in terms of boxing, and I think the Harper fight would be a better fight, and I could see that going to a trilogy on it being a contentious, close decision. I have more of an appetite for that fight than I have 154. Stay the heck away from 154. There's nothing there for Sandy Ryan for me. It's 147 or 140 for me. Afternoon, Luca.
I mean, at 147, the top three, Michaela Mayer, Lauren Price, and her. Tasha Jonas, according to BoxRec, is still listed at 4. Well, we both know what we think's happening with Tasha. I think everyone knows. We're just waiting for some sort of official announcement at some point.
Yeah.
Below that, we're getting into the realms again of Sandy maybe taking her foot off the gas, which we don't want to see because they're not going to challenge her. I agree with you. 154, it's not just the weight. It's, height-wise, she's 5'8", so she probably not lose too much in terms of height, but I just don't think at 154 she competes. If she can get down to 140, then why not have to fight back against Terry? I mean, she stopped Terry pretty conclusively, didn't she, last time they fought? Terry's
different fighters now, though, I believe.
Yeah, look, but by Terry's own admission, that wasn't at a natural weight. She moved up to 147 for the opportunity. We know that. Everyone knew that before the fight. So Sandy done that. It's a different fight now. It's still for a world title. It's for the IBF, I believe. That's what Terry holds at the division below. Domestic matchup, mate. I can see it happening. I can also see it being a GBM fight because, as we know, Sandy's contract is fight by fight with Matchroom. So if they're not happy with what they've seen, I wouldn't at all be surprised to see that lands on a GBM card.
No. interesting. I'm interested to see what's next. Sorry, I've just dropped my bloody phone. I don't know where it's gone. Disappeared. There we go. Right then, there was a small matter of the co-main event last night, which saw, and if I heard Adam Smith say the Darlington man one more time, they were both from Darlington. Absolute goof. Anyway, Mark Dickinson, the unbeaten light heavyweight, was supposed to fight at super middleweight last night against former super welterweight. Sorry, we're not allowed to say light middleweight anymore. So former British champion at 154, Troy Williamson, in a make or break local derby last night against a highly touted and favoured Mark Dickinson. Now I'm going to say it, the elephant in the room. Disgusting, really, from Team Dickinson. I'm not hearing the excuses. I've been around boxing 40 years ish. My brother was a decent high-level professional. I've got friends that were world champions, etc., etc., etc. But I've seen fighters miss weight. You miss weight by half a pound, couple of 100 ounces. You don't miss weight by 5-something pounds. That's been 7 days out, realising that you have either miscalculated or just can't make it. So you just start tapering and just tick over. You don't miss by nearly 6 pounds by another weight division. Right, so I believe that was unprofessional, possibly a tactic. I'm not gonna bleat on about that, but what I would say is, props to Troy Williamson. I mean, he's a natural 154, right? Had the best performances of his career at 154. So he's boxed, dipped his toes in at 160, and came in last night. Didn't ask for a check weigh-in the day after. Went in there. Was losing that fight up to the third round. I thought he started to come good in the middle round as Dickinson's gas started to deplete. And then, for me, it could have got stopped when Dickinson went down. I don't believe it needed to continue. You could see Dickinson, I think, got caught with the left hook and then just wasn't there for the 1-2. Troy Williamson put his career back on track last night with a statement win. Not going to bleat on about it. Some of us got 40-1 on round 9, but hey ho. I mean, what's your thoughts on what was a fantastic win for the Trojan last night in Sunderland?
Look, first things first. Any fighter that's lost 3 fights in a row.
I'm mine, Luke.
That's done me. Any fighter that loses 3 fights in a row and has only had 1 win in 5, which Troy had going into last night, your career is on the line. And that's not an exaggeration. His career was on the line. He lost to Josh Kelly, had a win in a 6-rounder against the Journeyman, and then lost to Jarko, Ish Davis, and Jai Tucker out in America. And what was, you looked at that performance out in America, didn't you, back in April, and you wondered if we'd seen the last of Troy. I know we had a conversation messaging like we do about wondering if we'd see Troy again after that. And I didn't like this fight when it was made. I know you didn't like this fight, knowing Troy as well. But, to miss a weight by 5.5 pounds, like you say, that's a decision that's made 7-10 days out. You're going to be taking too much away from yourself not to do it, so you taper yourself down. I will say, if that's him having tapered himself down, I'd love to know what he was at about 10 days ago, because Mark Dickinson last night, as
massive
alluded to, looks massive. Not only that, he looks out unconditioned.
It looked,
which again, sorry, mate, feeds the narrative of he didn't miss weight. That was a conscious effort. But to do that and not even look conditioned, because we've seen fighters come in overweight before, but they still look conditioned, don't they? They still, look like they've made some sort of effort. Look, we're not on the inside of Mark Dickinson. We don't know what's been going on. But all I will say is he did not look his best in there last night. But as you hinted at, those first couple of rounds, I was going, oh, crap, Troy's eating a lot of shots here, because it was so obvious Dickinson was bigger than him. And we were back and forth.
We were talking, weren't we, as it was going on.
I think we said it at the end of the third. We said, if Mark doesn't tire here, this is a test for Troy's chin. Now, we know how good Troy's chin is. We saw it against Josh Kelly. We saw it against the Jarko, in particular, when he went through some rough moments in those fights. what impressed me most was he was, from the third round onwards, he was coming forward and he was letting off 3 and 4 punch combinations, wasn't he? He had an uppercut that was landing all night. And okay, yes, you could say you want to see more head movement from Troy, but at this point of Troy's career, he's not suddenly going to introduce head movement, is he? We know what he is, we know what he does. But what I like the most is when he smelt blood and he got the opportunity to take Dickinson out, he done it. He put his foot on the gas, and even after Dickinson had got back up, like you said, he could have coasted the rest of that round and then tried to seal the deal in the 10th. But he made a conscious effort that he was going to go then in the 9th. Look, you can argue that the referee could have jumped in after the left hook. We didn't need to see the straight right that sort of when he was frozen that put him down. But we talk about fighters having the instinct to finish boxers off. And regardless of what Troy will say personally to you or in interviews he's given, there must have been some doubts from him last night because he hasn't won a fight since 2023 and he's gone through some tough times with those unanimous decisions. Then you get your opponent coming in overweight and it's like, Jesus, the whole world's against me.
Just stacked up against him. Yeah.
Just stacked up against him. But look, it's the English title. But the English title now opens doors for Troy.
Oh, mate, it's like winning a world title for Troy last night. I know what it means to him. I know him, obviously. He's practically family. And I've been speaking to him all through camp. And I spoke to him yesterday before he went in. And I'd said to him, look, it's statement time. He was confident, which he always is. He's confident in himself. And I'd said to him, you need to go out there and make a statement. I don't mean like I had any influence on it, but he said it with the utmost confidence that you will see the best performance I have ever given. He said that to me, and I've spoken with him this morning, and he did what he said. The problem with Dickinson is he fought Troy's fight. Yeah. Troy's got an engine. Troy can do 15, 16, 17 rounds non-stop. Whether I know him or not, I believe that he's probably got one of the best chins in British boxing. I think he's been knocked down twice. Once in amateurs against the Cuban world champion in the WSB. And I think Mason Cartwright knocked him down over there ringside in Newcastle for the British title. Look, Dickinson came in ill-prepared, it looked like last night. And I think he thought that, because the commentary team basically wrote Troy off halfway through the fight. No head movement. Yeah. He's too slow. He's not got it anymore. I think it was only Sonny Edwards, really, that said, right, but Troy's had got that dog in him and can do this for the 10 or 12 rounds. And about round 5, I think you sent me a message and said that Dickinson had started to look cumbersome and looked like his power was starting to go. Not in terms of punch power, because I believe Troy was the bigger puncher of the two, but at a lighter weight. He just couldn't keep up with Troy. Troy was in the pocket, like you said, a bit of showboating. And I think when he showboated, it looked like it broke something within Dickinson. I think he thought at that moment, shit. Lucas saying it here, look, I were gutted by the commentary. Adam Smith is so biased, it is unreal. I know he's a company man, I get that. Yeah. But Troy deserved a little bit more respect last night. They were all up his ass after he got the win. But hindsight's, 2020. But I know they brought Callum Simpson in. Now, for me, that's a strange one, because Callum Simpson is a boxer, fighter, allegedly, apparently. But they brought him in. And I spoke to Troy about it. I'm not going to say what Troy said, but they brought Callum Simpson in, and I thought Troy was going to call him out. But Troy's a respectful guy. I don't think I've ever heard him call anybody out. He's just not that type of guy. Josh Kelly is the only time we've heard him call someone out, Josh. And you know why that was. That. And it was awkward. They couldn't have made that fight last night anyway, because until the announcement's made, Callum Simpson isn't a matchroom fighter. I don't know whether we are going to see an announcement, because it was weird that they called him in. A bit pissed off that Frank Smith wasn't there for the interview. Sort of spat his dummy out because their fighter had lost and just wasn't there. I think Troy deserved a lot more props than that. Here's one. What do you think about this one? Troy versus Brad Pauls. Can I tell you, who were we talking about this morning? Or was it Charlie, my lad, that said Ty Mitchell is ranked, believe it or not? I'd like to see Troy get a money fight. I think Troy deserves a Saudi fight. I'm going to put a name out here that you'll laugh when I say it, but Darren Till. He needs a money fight now. Troy's 34. He's a former British champion. He's just had one of the best performances of his career, bar the Ted Cheeseman fight.
Yep.
I think it's about money now. And if he can get... Because I went online straight after the win. I've never seen anything like it. They were all talking about him. Fight Disciples, Adi Oladipo, TNT. Every sports network was talking about that performance because nobody expected it. You know, I didn't expect that myself. Me and you were talking, and I'd said it's looking like it's going to be a draw this because it was so evenly matched.
We said it at the end of the eighth.
Split decision.
We said it at the end of the eighth.
I thought split decision. You said split decision. I thought draw. Whatever happens, I think Troy deserves a big fight next. I think he deserves it, man. He deserves it. But the Brad Pauls fight would be a fantastic fight. I think Brad's got a fight coming up, has he not?
He's just fought. He fought a couple of weeks ago.
Sorry, yeah, he has. But don't know, man. I don't know.
I'll tell you this, mate. So I like the Brad Pauls fight, but I'll say this. If Callum Simpson, for whatever reason, vacates the British and Commonwealth belts, then I want to see the Brad Pauls fight. I think you'll agree with me, and I'm not speaking for Troy, but I'm sure he'd say the same. At this point of his career, he needs it to be decent money and with some sort of title on the line. So he's the English champion now. You would say he's next in line for that British if it becomes vacant. As the English, that's how it goes.
I mean, yeah, my son said to me this morning, because we're on about the Callum Simpson fight, and that would be a massive fight. But I thought he was on the verge of vacating, and he's been talked about fighting Skull. Yeah. But with them bringing him to the interview last night, that tells me that his boxer contract is null and void, because you'd never see that. Why would they bring... So Troy's not a matchroom fighter for a start off. Troy's not got any promotional backing.
No contract, yeah.
Another great thing for Troy last night, because he's not got a promoter. You know, he was brought in as an opponent. Didn't ask for anything special. Didn't ask for, for rehydration clauses or reweighs or bit of his purse. Or didn't ask for anything. Just came in got the win. And then they bring out the British champion, in that division. And the English is normally like the next. My brother won the English, and then fought Carl Johansson for the British in the next fight. So it sort of leads up to that. But to bring him in. So Frank Smith's not there. Troy's not a matchroom fighter. Neither's Callum Smith. To bring them together, it was just weird. It just felt weird.
It was weird. I think if they wanted to make any sort of announcement last night, they can't, because obviously we don't know what's going on with Boxer. I mean, Callum Simpson's had a weekend of it. He was front row at the Wasserman show in Dublin on Friday night, and then he was front row at Matchroom. Is he shopping? Look, let's just call it for what it is. Is he shopping around for a new promoter?
Think so. Looks like that, doesn't it?
Because there's ways to go to shows, isn't there? You can go to a show and you can have a good seat, but not be seen by the TV cameras. Or you can go and do what Callum's done the last 2 nights and be very visible on coverage, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. There's a fight. Nathan Heaney, Troy Williamson, the Stokies versus the North East firm. Because let me tell you this. I was going to go last night. You know how I feel about boxing shows. I don't really like going anymore. And I was going to go last night. You could not get a ticket. Troy could have sold 3 to 4 times as many tickets as he sold. It was inundated. And I left it to the last minute and couldn't go. Nathan Heaney versus Troy Williamson for the vacant British would be a massive fight.
That needs an arena, mate. That needs an arena
that could do 10,000. I'm not flippantly saying that. That fight could do 10,000. Troy has firmly planted himself in the 168 division. That's his second fight, I believe, at 168. Might even be his first. Is it second?
Second. I'm pretty sure his last one was 168. Let's look.
But Jai Tucker, want that 160, no?
Jai Tucker was 160. So that's his first time up at 168.
Wow. But yeah, look, big things for Troy. I'm obviously over the moon. I've got my Trojan merch on today. He's resting up. He's gone for a spa day with Jay's missus. He's going to chill out. He's going to reap the rewards of his performance, and he'll probably go straight back to the gym. props to his new coach, a new team as well. No disrespect to Craig, who was his former coach. It was nothing to do with a breakdown in the relationship. Craig is a predominantly amateur coach, and he'd said that he didn't want to do anything further with Troy. He felt that they'd gone as far as they can. So Troy sort of has moved across to his new team. And look, I think the freshen up has paid dividends. I am really excited for Troy. I think this is what he needed to get his swan song, because, you know, we're not unrealistic, and he's not unrealistic. I don't believe he'll go on too long. I think we might see 2 or 3 more fights from Troy before he hangs his gloves.
The right type of fights, though, mate. We know.
Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah. I would either like to see him in a big fight at Christmas or not at all until first quarter of next year. But whatever the fight will be, we will see a big fight, a massive fight. Have you got anything further to add on last night's boxing before we jump across to UFC Paris?
No, mate. I mean, it was one of these rare occasions where a next-gen show delivers. And we would say, by the way, from speaking, we would have said it even if Dickinson did beat Troy, because the card did deliver. We may not be...
Absolutely.
So, you know, it's one of those rare occasions where there was good matchups on the next-gen card, and there's some fights to be made off the back of it. Look, we said what we said about Pat McCormack. I personally hope we don't see Troy until the first quarter of next year. I think he deserves a proper 8, 9, 10-week training camp, which we know he didn't get for Dickinson. He said it himself. You told me that a few weeks ago, that he wasn't given a lot of notice for this fight. So let's give him a proper training camp, especially if he's going for a British or Commonwealth title. Allow him to have 10 full weeks in the gym and come into it in potentially the best shape of his career.
Yeah. Do you think it's a contender for British Fight of the Year?
Domestically, yes, right up there for me.
It's up there, isn't it? I know I'm biased, but Troy's going to come on the channel later on this week. Myself and Liam are going to do a straight talk. As normal, we'll be back this week. We'll be back with no punches pulled, but we're going to do a straight talk in the build-up to the massive fights we've got in Ireland and the United States. And Troy's going to come on. He's going to give us a bit of his time this week, so we'll save a few of our pointers for Troy. We'll get his opinion on what's next for him, and also his thoughts on the fights coming up. So yeah, let's move across the channel. Sorry. We saw a UFC fight card last night that was headlined by Baralio and Nasruddin Imavov. It was a fantastic card, man. Right from the off. I mean, Shauna Bannon, the Irish assassin, unfortunately, it always happens. She was going for the most wins by an Irish woman in the UFC. I think she's tied for most wins, and every time they throw a bauble on top of a fight, it always happens. She unfortunately got submitted. She just wasn't in that fight from the off. Didn't know much about Sam Hughes. I'd seen her fight a couple of times, but Shauna just looked out of her depth last night. I don't know, what was your take on that fight? She just looked like a kickboxer in an MMA fight for me.
That is exactly what I was about to say. No, that's exactly what I was about to say. She looks out of her depth, and it's difficult to see, especially when you know the talent she has and what she is capable of doing. But it comes down to something we say time and time again. The UFC is the best versus the best in every single one of those mixed martial arts disciplines. And if you're slightly off your game and you got a fighter that can do every single discipline, and that's what we saw for Shauna last night. Look, she'll rest, she'll restock, she'll regroup. She'll probably come back in London in March. That will probably be where we see her. I don't think we see her again this year. But yeah, out of her depth, things to learn. But hey, sometimes it takes a performance like that and things not going your way for you to make the necessary adjustments. Could be a blessing in the long term.
It could be. Yeah, she'll go back. She's with a decent team. She's head coach is Paddy Houlihan, for people that know. He's another Irish MMA fighter that was, I think his career got cut short by, I want to say injury, but I think it was something like a brain scan or a heart scan or something like that, wasn't it?
Some sort of medical issue.
Middleweight then, we saw... No, sorry, welterweight. We saw Andres Gustafsson get stopped by Fakhretdinov. Yeah, I mean, it was just stoppage after stoppage. Brad Tavares got chinned by Robert Brycek. And then the next one, Britain's own Sam Patterson think he's on a 4 fight. I want to say 4 fight. He lost his debut, then he got flattened in his debut, and then
He's gone 4 from 4 since then.
4 first-round stoppages, I want to say. His hands are something special. I mean, it looked like he got hurt just before he hurt his opponent, but his punch selection is immense to watch.
His striking selection, the way he feints with his kicks and lands little calf kicks as well, to take attention away. And I think he was stunned. I'm not going to say he was wobbled, but he definitely was stunned before he unleashed his finishing tirades. But look, you've mentioned it was finish after finish. 11 finishes last night, which equals the record. Only the third time ever. The other 2 events were Bisping and Rockhold 1 and Nunes and Pennington. So there you go. That's the sort of company we're talking that card being in last night.
Fantastic.
Sam Pattinson, I want to see him moved on now. I'm not saying too quickly, but I want to see him now looking towards trying to find a way to getting into the top 15, if that makes sense. And that means a better caliber of opponent.
Yeah, I think he deserves a top 15 guy at welterweight. I don't know who, but he definitely deserves a top 15. The next one gutted me because I'm a massive fan of the Hardwick brothers. Harry Hardwick, Cage Warriors featherweight champion, stepped up a weight division on 5 days' notice, I believe. I don't know the exact extent of the injury to his leg, but he got hit with a leg kick. He had a massive welt on his leg and he just could not stand properly from then on. And it was a weird one. He got stopped by leg kicks, which you don't see often. I've only seen it twice before, I believe. And yeah, gutted for him because I know he's better than that. I know he's a lot better than that. But like you said, the UFC is the best of the best. And unfortunately, he came up short last night.
To be uber critical, mate, that first leg kick was landed within 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I never saw him make any. He was very front foot heavy, which made those leg kicks easy. Never looked to check. Look, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I know you'll agree with me here. Even a slight check or change of his stance could have made it longer. Because like you say, I can't think of many occasions where leg kicks stop a UFC fight. You see it on the UFC game on the PlayStation. If you pound the leg enough, you can get a stoppage that way. But it doesn't happen in mixed martial arts. That for me was...
Unlike Liam, I'm a straight male. I only play Xbox.
I have an Xbox. I don't know why I went PlayStation there. I do have an Xbox. But, I think the adjustment that could have come from Harry never came. And that's the frustrating thing because it was, it was half a step back or not being so heavy on his front leg. And that's sort of change you'd expect a fighter to be able to adapt to. So not seeing it was the disappointing thing. But full credit to his opponent, Fernandez. Look, Hardwick's another one that hopefully similar to Sean and will come back.
He'll get look, he'll get a fight with a proper camp, and we'll see the best of Harry Hardwick. Yeah. That wasn't the best of Harry Hardwick last night. That was half a Harry Hardwick. Fucking hell, all the H's there. But, I know how good he is. And a lot of people, yourself, we know how good he is. To be a Cage Warriors champion, stands you in good stead. He's fought a decent level of opponent, and he just came up short against a good kid. Fernandez is really good. I think he's 11-2. I want to say. I think he's only dropped a couple of fights. Harry Hardwick is now 13-4-1. But we will see him come again. We will see him come again in his right weight division as well. You could see last night that he's not a 155 fighter. He's a 145 fighter. No. And it makes a massive difference being 10 pounds up, and ill-prepared. 5 days is not long enough to prepare to fight anybody, certainly not a world-class fighter. This one really fucking impressed me. Marcin Tybura got battered by Ante Delija. I think he's Polish, I want to say, is he? Wow, his hands. From the off, it just blitzed Tybura, and you could see Tybura trying to roll with it, but he was finding the gaps, and then once he clumped him on his chin, that was all she wrote, man.
I mean, if you've got a nickname such as the Walking Trouble, then you're going to, you should be expecting something special to come, and it was. Look, Tybura doesn't get manhandled, beaten up and stopped like that very often, if ever. That was the one, watching that on the train when I was on my way home last night, that made me go, ooh. You look at that and you go, ooh, right, okay, then that was something special there. Look, the heavyweights in the UFC is an interesting landscape. We obviously had the Aspinall and Gann press conference on Thursday or Friday. There's opportunities for fighters like this now that if they get 2, 3, 4 wins, because the landscape has changed and it's bringing 3 new bloods, that you're in the title picture, and that is how you make a statement. You know, on a night where there was lots of knockouts and lots of first-round knockouts and stoppages as well, that is one of the most impressive ones.
I think Delia's a sparring partner of Tom, or has been sparring Tom. I did hear that mentioned.
Has been. I think Tom's using him in this camp by all accounts. So
brilliant. Light heavyweight division, Umar Sy got a stoppage against Bredson Ribeiro. Again, just jumped on him from the off. I think he stopped him at 4 minutes of the first round. It was another brutal stoppage. That was the final fight on the prelims, and then we were supposed to have Patricky Pitbull fighting Keita, but that got pulled last week. So we saw William Gomi fight Buchala. Decision, fairly comfortable decision. To be fair, he didn't seem in that much trouble within the fight. I'd like to see Gomi fight somebody in the top 10. I believe that we need to start pushing him on now. What's your thoughts on Gomi?
Yeah, I mean, look, you want to stick a pin in an arena, in a core arena that's bouncing. Unfortunately, that is
unreal atmosphere.
The fight that done it, but Gomi impressed. He done what he needed to do for 15 minutes. However, I'm like you. I want to see him tested now. I don't want to see Gomi. There's no reason why he can't be out again before the end of the year. He took minimal damage last night. He was, you know, as long as his hands and feet, etc., are okay. There's no reason why we can't see him out again. But I want to see him step.
Sorry to stop you. I'd like to see him fight Pitbull, or I'd like to see him fight Moicano. I think he's that good to go up.
Moicano's a bigger statement. I know. Look, we know where Moicano's at in terms of his own career at the moment. But if he can beat Moicano, it will do more for him in the long term.
It could be a massive statement. Reece McKee got submitted, I believe. Did he get submitted? No. Sorry. Body shot. What it was wicked solar plexus shot. Herb Dean doing what Herb Dean does best, ignoring it and letting him take 4 or 5 shots that he didn't really need. When a guy folds from a body shot like that in MMA, just stop the fight, man.
It's
done. It's done. I feel sorry for Reece McKee because he got thrown to Hamzat in his debut and got absolutely ragdolled. Went back down to Cage Warriors. I think he won 3. Came back again, and he just seems to get these fucking fights, man. I don't believe he's a welterweight either. I don't believe Reece McKee is a welterweight. I think he's a lightweight. I think he's too thin in terms of stature. I know he's tall, and that's how he makes the weight. But I don't believe he's thick enough for welterweight. I'd like to see him drop down. But Axel Soler, I mean, did what he needed to do. He's remained unbeaten. I think he's got a draw on his record, but he's 11-0 now. I think he's announced himself to the welterweight division.
Yeah, statement made.
Patterson Soler, anybody? Sorry.
Possibly, mate. I mean, look, there's a night with so many statements, wasn't it? I mean, near enough every fight, it's a moment you want to go back and watch, highlight reel worthy. And, that's not us trying to big it up. That is the reaction. If you look at anything on social media talking about these fights last night, it's saying it's one of the best, definitely of the year, but possibly of the last 5-6 years in terms of, it's like that UFC London event. We had the first one out of COVID where Paddy won, Molly got the spinning elbow, etc., etc. It's just a night that rolled and rolled and rolled. And we had another one. And it's another argument for these fight nights getting out of the apex.
Oh, mate, that fucking atmosphere last night. I mean, I want to go to an MMA event.
Mate, that arena is
honestly, the noise is fucking unreal. I felt sorry for Tom Aspinall at the press conference, to be fair. But thank God that fight's not in France, because they are
He would have, mate. He would have known going into that he's going into the lines.
But you could see that it threw him off a little bit because he just could not get away. He said, "Oh, I'll throw it over to you, Cyril." He just thought, "Nah, fuck this." The next one, Mason Jones. I mean, fucking hell, man. What can you say about Mason Jones? That kid is a fucking tough as sin, mate. He's an animal. Absolutely fantastic. I don't want to say comeback win, but there were spots in that fight where, it wasn't going the best for him, but he just kept grinding, and got the TKO stoppage in the second round.
Look, let's make a comparison to the boxing we spoke about earlier. Similar to Troy, it's not all going his way, but he's willing to walk through the fire because he believes in his own chin and his own punches, etc., etc. Yes, okay, completely different, and he was never in as much trouble as Troy was in early on in terms of he couldn't get his own work off, but he had to walk through the fire with Oki. Oki was a strong man who had a game plan, and it would have been very easy for Mason Jones to tuck up and just survive for 15 minutes and get out there with losing on the cards and, without becoming a highlight reel stoppage. But to arrest the tide, to get his own work off, Mason Jones is a lightweight to keep an eye on. I think he'll be top 15 within the next 12 months.
Absolutely, yeah. I believe that win puts him firmly near the top 15, top 20. I think we'll see him in a big fight either first quarter of next year or possibly the back end of this year on one of the big American cards that are being talked about for the back end of the year. The next one, another teammate of Tom Aspinall, saw Modestas Bukauskas just put a beating on Beardew, Paul Craig, and we saw Paul Craig announce his retirement at the end. I'm gutted because what Paul Craig has brought to MMA, what he's done for Scottish MMA. 6 or 7 years ago, he was a fucking school teacher, and here he is fighting on some of the biggest cards. He's had some fantastic wins. He beat Jamal Hill. He beat the current light heavyweight champion, Ankalaev, with 4 minutes 59 of the last round.
When he was lost every minute of the fight up until that as well.
He was getting his ass whooped. He broke Jamal Hill's arm. Paul Craig is a really good fighter. He's just, he's not got it anymore, and he's a clever enough guy to know when his time has come. And it wasn't good to see him go out like that. But on the flip side of that, Bukauskas has had it rough. He got dropped by the UFC. Went back to Cage Warriors, won their world title. Came back, got a bad leg injury. Yeah. Came back again, and here he is announcing himself on the light heavyweight scene again. What's your sort of take on that fight before we touch on the core and main event?
Let's talk about Paul Craig first, as you just touched on. A servant to Scottish and British mixed martial arts. It was a shame to see him go out that way last night, but like you say, he's known, I think, for the last couple of fights, and he's just been hoping he's got one more moment, one more of those magic moments in him, and unfortunately,
Shogun as well. He beat Shogun, didn't he? Albeit
he's been in the
best Shogun, but still
to win against Shogun. He's never got to go to the top of the mountain and win a title, but he's had a great career over the years.
He's had a great career, hasn't he?
Yeah. Even when he's lost fights, he's still given it as good as he's got, and that's what you can say last night as well. So whatever's next for Paul Craig, whether it's, I believe, he'll go into the coaching world. It sounds like that's what he wants to do.
What do you think's next for Bukauskas? Top 10, maybe.
Should be, yeah. Look, it has to be a name, Paul Craig. If you want to call it a gatekeeping victory, that's sort of crossing over that threshold. Now let's see how he looks in with the top 10. I think that's how it has to go. It can only be moving forwards for him.
Yeah, okay then. So, France's own Benoit Saint-Denis fought Mauricio Rufe last night in a back and forth fight for as long as it lasted. Got the submission at 2:56 of the second round. Benoit Saint-Denis, I thought that... I don't know what to think of Benoit Saint-Denis because he pulls out these performances, but then we see him, get flatlined and in fights that I thought he'd beat Dustin Poirier coming off the performances prior to that and just got his ass handed to him. Everyone. What do you think of that fight last night? Because Rufi was, he's only lost 2. Good fighter, fighting nerd. It wasn't a good night for them last night, but I actually thought he was going to win. I picked Rufy to win that fight.
Benoit Saint-Denis fed off of that crowd. I know we keep bringing it up, but that atmosphere last night, especially as a French fighter, he fed off of that crowd, got through the tough moments and found a way. Look, it was more of a back and forth fight than it possibly could have been for Saint-Denis. I did wonder if he was going to get the victory. I'm like you, mate. I don't know what to make of him. I don't think I'm sold on him. I always think with Benoit that when he gets in there with the elite guys, the top 3-5 in the division, we're going to see him come up short. He's going to be fun in fights. You're going to enjoy watching him. You're not going to want to miss his fights.
Takes way too many shots for me.
Yeah, but takes way too many shots. And against the big guys, he just doesn't have enough tactical nous or willingness to adapt in his own game to overcome those boys. That's where I stand with him. Always entertaining, but don't look. I would love to be proven wrong, but I don't see him picking up a title.
No, I agree. I agree, mate. Right, I'll ask you a question then. So the Kai Baralio for Nasruddin Imavov. Is Imavov the middleweight champion in waiting?
Yes.
Is that good for me? I think he's that good. Yeah. I think he stuttered a couple of times in his journey early on, but the guy just gets better and better. At points in that fight last night, he made Baralio look so basic. I just think he's absolutely fantastic. And I think he could give Hamzat real fucking problems. Real fucking problems.
It was just disciplined but effective throughout the fight. He done everything he needed to do for 25 minutes. Yes, okay, you could say he was safety first. We never saw him maybe moving through the gears, but what he did do was highly impressive. And you've just got to say that he's champion in waiting is strong, but he definitely is making a claim for a world title shot. There is no doubt about that. Absolutely fantastic performance to cap off a great night for French MMA.
Absolutely. It was a brilliant performance and puts him in line for a world title shot, I believe. You know, we'll have to wait to see what Hamzat's got planned. But I think that fight has to be certainly in the offing. He's at the most one more fight away from challenging for the world title shot for me, because Baralio, they were talking about being next. And, you know, Imavov didn't look in trouble at any point in that fight for me.
No, look, it wouldn't at all surprise me, because we know what Hamzat's like with the breaks he likes to take. If Imavov fights for an interim title, we don't like interim titles in the UFC, but we know how it works. Hamzat takes long breaks. Dana doesn't want to see a division stagnate unless it's heavyweight, but we're part of that for now. I think we'll see Imavov more likely winning an interim belt before he gets his hands on
Hamzat. I don't think we're going to see Hamzat for at least another 6 months, and I think that Imavov needs to get out there in the next 2 or 3 months. But look, that capped off a fantastic night in Paris. We will touch on stateside. Looks like Sugar Nunes is fighting Navarrete. What's your thoughts on the performance we saw last night from Sugar?
If he fights like he did last night against Navarrete, he loses.
I agree. He cannot perform like that against Navarrete. It would be curtains for him.
Look, I get it. A massive homecoming, a home crowd, the first time that particular region of Mexico has had live boxing, a professional boxing, fantastic. I get all of that, and that can factor into a fighter's performance. But he was sloppy last night, and he was sloppy in his offense and defensive work. And you just at times wondered if it was a better caliber of opponent, would they have
possibly, yeah. If that had been Navarrete last night, Navarrete would have beat him easy, I believe.
Yeah,
I think Nunes relies on his power too much instead of boxing. Just relies on his power. It does get him out of a lot of spots, but yeah, as he goes up the levels, he can't do that against Navarrete. Navarrete will 12-0 him if he just looks for the power shot. He'll just 12-0 him.
Yeah, Navarrete has the ability to make that look very, very easy if Sugar turns up like he did last night. However, the best version of Sugar Nunes beats Navarrete, and that's the caveat to the fight. We didn't see the best of Sugar last night. If we do, I think he's got too much for Navarrete at this point in Navarrete's career.
No, I agree. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off? for the show. It's been an
No, mate.
action-packed weekend. It is an action-packed weekend again this coming week. You're going to see a lot of us guys. As I said, we'll be back with No Punches Pulled on Tuesday. LT Sweet Boxing Sciences YouTube channel is going to be doing some content this week. I'm assuming there'll be Liam's Fight Night picks will be airing this week.
Yeah, there'll be an episode at some point during the week, Tuesday or Wednesday night.
I'll be doing predictions on my channel. We're going to be doing straight talk again in the lead up to the massive fights this week. We're going to have Troy, the Trojan Williamson, on the show. Not sure when. We're probably looking at Wednesday, Thursday for that. But as always, to everybody that's joined us, Ryan, Luca, thank you for everybody that's tuned in. Liam, I appreciate you as always, my brother. Thanks for joining me. As always, guys, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Keep punching. We'll see you soon.